This season of My Comic Shop History is brought to you in part by Undiscovered Realm in White Plains, New York. UR has the biggest selection of Funko Pops around, with more than 1,000 in stock, starting at only $5 each, as well as a large selection of rare, high-end, and exclusive Pops. UR also hosts daily card game and video game tournaments, and sets up at dozens of comic conventions across the country. Check out Undiscovered Realm in person or online, and be sure to tell them Desi Westside sent you. Welcome to My Comic Shop History. I am your host, Anthony Desiato. This week, our dive into con season continues, Aw Yeah style. We are here in beautiful downtown Harrison, New York at Aw Yeah Comics, and I am joined by two of the owners of Aw Yeah. So across from me, we have a comic book creator whose work you've seen in the pages of Tiny Titans, Encounter, and more. Franco, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And to my left, we have the C2E2 Event Manager for ReedPOP, Mighty Mike Negin.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here.
Yeah, both of you making your My Comic Shop History debut. I'm very excited to have both of you on the show.
It's exciting to be here.
Yeah, I'm upset that I wasn't on season 1, but we'll get over that.
I know, it took all the way until season 4, but better late than never.
Sure.
The last time that I saw both of you together was, once again, here at Aw Yeah Comics for the Legend signing. You guys went all out for this. You had a
that was a
killer signing. Who were the guests that you had here at the store? This was back in April.
Yeah, there was Walter and Louise Simonson. There was Pete Tomasi. There was Jerry Ordway. And then a last-minute surprise
Special guest star, Paul Levitz.
Paul Levitz showed up. Yeah. So all superstars,
yeah, all legends.
All legends in their own right.
Yeah, the store was packed. So I want to thank both of you and Mark Hammond as well, the one of the other owners and the manager of the store, for allowing me to be here to film for My Comic Shop Country. I filmed part of the signing. But, I mean, this place was packed. It was really cool.
It was probably the most successful signing we've ever had at the store, I would think.
Yeah, there was a line in and around the store and kind of going out the door.
Yeah.
And for me, that's kind of fun because I'm usually the one signing at these things. So I just got to stand there and watch them do it. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was also actually cool also to see these legends kind of together and interact, because you really don't get to see them together much, right? When you're at a comic show, everyone's at their individual table, they're interacting with their audience, and they don't get to talk amongst each other. So I found it really interesting. Like, I see Walt and Weezy together all the time, but just seeing Walt kind of, constantly nudging Paul Levitz and he whispering in each other's ears, and obviously they have some kind of inside joke going that we don't know about, but just seeing them laughing, I enjoyed that stuff.
It was fun for me because I talked to Walt and Weezy, well, all of them, and I said, "Do you need anything?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah," I forget what he wanted, tonic water or something like that. And Weezy wanted coffee. And I've known them and I've seen them, but they don't remember me from Adam at all. So I went to go get coffee. And then when people came up to me to ask me to sign some of my books, I could see Walt giving me the side eye, like he was all confused. Like, why are they asking this guy to sign stuff? And then he saw what I was signing. He's like, "Oh," and then he kind of got it afterwards.
Oh,
he made
you're
the
that
connection.
guy.
Yeah. So.
And then, Mike, what did Walt Simonson send you out for? Was it markers or erasers?
He sent it out for Sharpies. The Action Comic 1000 covers were extremely glossy and hard to sign. So the Sharpies that we gave him just weren't working out. We gave all of them, just kind of weren't working out. He's like, "I think it'll work better with a really fine tip Sharpie." So he says, "Do you have any?" And I was, patting my, ironically, if I'm at a convention, usually I have Sharpies out of every pocket and orifice, but not at the store. So I said, "I'll run down to CVS." And of course I sprinted the 2 blocks away that it's not really even that far. And I did actually sprint because I wanted to get back.
You were winded.
And I was extremely winded. For those of you who obviously can't see me, I am a little of the rotund nature. So I sprinted to CVS and hoped that they had some Sharpies, and they didn't. And I, by pure miracle, light of God type of thing, I was walking away, and how people mess up the aisle sometimes, literally shoved into some other stuff on the floor at the end of the aisle was the Sharpies that Walt was asking for, and I picked it up. I was like, "Oh," and I ran back with them.
There you go.
And they worked out well, better, I think.
Yeah. My favorite part of that whole day was going to dinner. Just sitting around telling stories was just the most fun for me.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. That must have been awesome.
They were telling stories not only about themselves and their careers and just behind the scenes stories, but Walt told this story, and this is a bad I'm telling a bad story because I don't even remember what he was talking about, but he was talking about the one time that he actually lettered his own book. And apparently he used this old school typecasting mechanism, like of some sort.
Right, I remember that.
And he went on about it for like a good 10 minutes, but I was riveted to every word that he said.
No idea what he was talking about.
I had no idea what he was talking about, but I was so like, every word that streamed down, and I was like, this is amazing. Like it was really a great time.
Yeah. Now, well, kudos to you guys and the rest of the All Yeah crew for that event. And Franco, I want to publicly thank you here on the record for your help during the My Comic Shop Country Kickstarter campaign. Not only did you contribute a sketch reward, which got scooped up real fast.
Did I do that for you?
You did.
Oh, okay. I can't remember.
It was a Wonder Woman. All right, it was a Wonder Woman. Yeah.
Cool.
So you did that, but then beyond that, you also designed the new not so flat squirrel.
Right.
Squirrel that's been floating around. So for listeners, if you follow any of the social media pages that I have, you've likely seen our new squirrel, and it's the hitchhiking squirrel with the backpack.
Right.
And it's when you sent me that the first time, I was just like, oh, this is so perfect. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Yeah, I took some liberties. I didn't want them to be flat anymore.
Yeah. That's the thing. Flat no more. I think it's very appropriate.
Right. And then the backpack has the AR symbol on it.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite touches. I love seeing that.
I know what I'm doing sometimes.
You might have a future in this industry. I don't know. Maybe.
We'll see.
Well, maybe to bridge the gap and get into this con talk, when I have new guests on the show, it's somewhat of a tradition that I ask them about their comic shop histories. So I guess that's where I would start, and maybe we'll start with you, Mike. A store, either the first store that you went to or a store along your journey that really had a significant impact on you.
You're asking for a long story here. That's basically, I'll try and keep it as short as I can. It's a little bit of a history about me and my life. In the second grade, I couldn't read. I was in danger of getting left back. And my mother went up to the school and she was like, what can I do here? Like, he's just not interested. And my second grade teacher, Mrs. Sklar, she said, comic books. Comic books is the way to go. Boys love comic books. It's pictures, there's words. It'll help him get engaged.
Little did she know what she was doing.
Right. I should hunt that woman down. So
she owes me a lot of money.
She owes me a lot of money and a lot of time in my life. So sure enough, my mother started picking up books at the local corner store or whatever it was, and I started getting books there. And then maybe I was into it a year. I was kind of rolling up the comics and putting them in my back pocket and kind of throwing them in the drawer and whatnot. And my reading, by the way, got tremendously better to the point where by the time fourth grade came around, I was an honor student, which in the middle of Brooklyn was in 1979. It was few and far between those people. So so I was an honor student, and I subsequently was an honor student for the rest of my career and high school, at junior high school, et cetera, et cetera. So my best friend at the time, Mike Valek, if you're listening, which he's not, he's still one of my best friends, by the way.
Make him listen to this. Every download counts.
Should. I name checked you, brother. You should be listening. So he said, "You're not going to believe this. There's a comic book store in the neighborhood." I was like, "A what?" And they're like, "It's a comic book store." I go, "Wait a second. There is a store just dedicated to selling comics." And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Take me there." So sure enough, I was like 10 years old. We went. It was maybe 5 or 6 blocks away. It really wasn't that far, but in the grand scheme, when you're 10, like 2 blocks away seems...
Yeah, you don't go much farther than half a block.
Right, exactly. So we walked over there, and sure enough, on 92nd and M, in the middle of Canarsie, Brooklyn, was Canarsie Books and Comics, owned by Jerry and Harriet Kanowitz. What they seemed ancient at the time, but they weren't. They probably weren't much older than I am now, which is kind of scary. But they had started this comic book store actually in the early 70s, a little different part of town, like 3 years later. They had done it on just weekends. Like 3 years later, when Jerry retired full-time from the printing industry, they moved the store and had it open full-time. And from the day I walked in there, like, my life just changed. I spent the first year spending, pretty much every afternoon and weekend there, just hanging out. It was a real small town store, same people in there all the time. And about a year and a half into it, Jerry says, you hear so much, you're helping so much. He goes, you pretty much work here. Do you want a job? And I was like, Yeah, I want a job.
That's the way, man. Time and again, this has come up in these episodes. Like, that's how you get a job at a comic shop.
Yeah, but you know what? Jerry was sneaky, because what it really came down to is he knew every penny he was giving me, I was just going to spend on comics. So in the end, like, he got all the money anyway.
He got free labor out of the deal, basically.
Yeah, basically. So I wound up working there almost pretty much through college. Like, that's how long I worked there. And that, you know, obviously that I made a lot of friendships there that have lasted my lifetime. My best friend Frank, you know Frank, I met him in the comic book store. Now he's the godson to my oldest son. Right at this moment, my buddy Mark, he's watching my kids right now. I met him in the comic book store when I was 10 years old. Like, these are the friends I made for a lifetime. So that store had a tremendous impact on me. Plus, Jerry was a diehard comic book old school guy, especially Gold and Silver Age type of stuff. And he would just talk about all this old stuff that's not even necessarily mainstream for then. And he just imparted so much wisdom to me in the industry. Like, it's an invaluable experience and memory I can never replace.
Well said. Is the store still there, or is it closed?
Unfortunately, it's interestingly enough, I'm putting something together for this September. It'll be the 20th anniversary when the store closed down, 1998. September 1998, the store closed. Jerry was just older. The audience necessarily wasn't there in the neighborhood anymore. Jerry had gotten older. He had gotten sick, and he just couldn't do it anymore.
Gotcha.
So he closed the store down, and unfortunately, a few years later, he passed away, which was heartbreaking to me. But I still keep in touch with his family, his sons, and stuff like that. So yeah.
Wow, that's really nice.
We're this September. I'm planning a store reunion, like where, you know, a lot of those guys I still keep in touch with, but there are ones that I don't keep in touch with regularly, but you know, through Facebook or run into conventions and stuff like that. So we're going to put something together to do the anniversary of the closing, and just, you know, one last hurrah. We're actually going to Skype in the guy that's on the West Coast. It's going to be...
That should be a really cool event.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
And I love the teacher encouraging you to read comics to help your reading skills.
Yes.
And kind of on that note, Franco, I want to get into your secret origin as well, but you are part of DC's new Zoom initiative, right? These original graphic novels aimed at younger readers, and the one that you're going to be working on is Superman of Smallville.
Right. Yeah, it comes out in February 2019.
That's very cool. So now, are you writing, drawing, both?
Writing, and Art Baltazar is doing we're writing together, and he's doing the artwork.
All right, very cool. Is it written yet, or is it still in progress?
It is mostly written. Usually, you know, we write it together, and then Art goes back and does thumbnails, and then we hand it in, and then we do revisions, and then he, you know, pretty much draws it from the thumbnails. So, but yeah, most of it's written. We know exactly what's going to happen, and I'm not telling you until the book comes out.
New twist, though. Clark Kent as a boy has a best friend named Mike Negin. Just a new twist on the mythos.
He does
you heard
not.
it here first.
He does not, just for the record.
No, don't worry. I wasn't angling for any scoops.
You promised.
But I am excited for it. I mean, Superman's my favorite character. Mike, I think that's something that we share.
We do. Superman is my favorite.
Who's your favorite character, Franco?
It's always been, I want to say Superman because he's, you know, helped pay my mortgage. So I want to say Superman, but it's always been Batman and Spider-Man, the two top for me. But yeah, I've given a lot of stories to Superman, so I'd have to say he's pretty up there.
Well, Superman of Smallville, again, he's my favorite character. We were talking before we sat down. Smallville's my all-time favorite television series. So just from the title alone, I'm on board. But what I think is especially cool, you know, I've spoken about this with retailers on the podcast, but also as I've been filming the documentary that I'm currently working on. You know, this notion of where are there opportunities for growth in the industry? And one of the things that always comes up is, you know, maybe it's not so much about getting your existing customers to buy more, but where the growth really is creating new readers, bringing new people into the hobby, the industry, bringing them into stores. And it seems like this is a way to potentially do that, to create and nurture like the next generation.
Yeah, I've been saying that for years and working towards that for years. I mean, all the way back to Tiny Titans, and even before that, we were doing books for kids. When we heard about the opportunity that, you know, because we were pitching some ideas to DC, Dan DiDio, the publisher of DC, we were talking to him, and he said, well, not right now. I forget what we were talking to him about, and he said, not right now. He goes, hit us up in a little while that we have something coming down the pike, which was this Zoom and the Ink line, the two separate lines. So it was in San Diego last year. that we were going to talk to him, but we didn't see him. And luckily, we had made arrangements, Art and I, to go up to we were in California in San Diego, but we went up to Burbank and went to the DC offices, and we sat down with everybody there, and they gave us the go-ahead right there on the spot, which was kind of cool, because they asked us, what characters are you interested in, and we said Superman, like without hesitation. And they said, well, what are your ideas? And we told them, and then flash forward to few months ago, we were in Denver when they announced the line. They announced a whole bunch of different people on these books, and they did a big presentation with librarians and stuff like that, and every image they put up, we were one of the first people to get up and talk, and we weren't given any indication of any of the other books that they were doing, because they were all pretty tight-lipped about everything. So we were the first people to go up there. I think right before us was Shea Fontana, who was doing the DC Superhero Girls, and she's doing a new Batman book, and I'm like, oh, that looks pretty cool. I want to pick up that Batman book. And then it was us, and then it was all these other people, and, you may not know their names, and I can't recall a lot of them off the top of my head, but, they're famous, young adult writers or writers, Peter and the Starcatchers, this guy's an author of these books and everything. And every book that they put up there, I'm like, oh, I want to buy that. That looks cool. So I hope they have something kind of cool on their hands and something that'll get into the hands of younger readers. We're hoping ours does, at least.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. I mean, I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully it does have, that impact as we hope it will. So as far as your secret origin, what's either the first store that you went to or a store along your journey that really had an impact on you?
I don't know if it was a store. I grew up not being able to read very well because my parents were born in Italy, and I was first generation born here, so I didn't speak English very well. So I had a tough time learning how to read and all that as well. Same kind of background as Mike. But I remember going, we lived in one place with my dad, and my uncles owned a restaurant that was about an hour away from our house. And my dad would get up to have breakfast with us in the morning, and that was the only time I would see him, because, he would work all day and I wouldn't see him at night. So on the weekends, on Saturdays, I would have the chance to go to work with him, and I would go to the restaurant and I would clean tables, and in the afternoon he'd give me $5 and say, here, here's your pay, basically. Go spend it on whatever you want. And I'd run down to the corner drugstore, and I remember seeing a spindle rack with comic books, and I'm like, ooh, what are these? And I had bought comic books before, but, like Richie Rich and those other ones. But this was the first time I remember seeing superhero comics. And I'm like, ooh, what are these? And I would buy them and read them and trace the drawings in them and try and draw them myself, which is how, I got interested in drawing superheroes and stuff like that. But then there were things missing in my collection. So I bought, I remember telling people the first time I remember buying a story where it had to be continued was the Teen Titans, where they go looking for the Doom Patrol with Marv Wolfman and George Perez, and that issue was awesome. And I'm reading the issue, and then it doesn't end, and it continues next issue, and then a month later I go back to the store and it wasn't there. They were sold out, and back in those days there was no way to get the book, so I didn't read the end of that story until like 12 years later. I think I didn't read the end of that story. So, but that kind of hooked me. And then I would get my comics through the mail because there was no real comic shop where I was. And then eventually there was one that opened up in town, and I was just in awe. And I was like, and I would go in every week and get my comics. So I had a roundabout way to get to comics. I didn't really do it through a comic store at first.
It's always interesting to me to hear from people who, experienced a time when there weren't comic shops, and then you have that moment of discovery of like, oh, there's a place that's completely devoted to comics. So I think that's really cool. Mm-hmm. So Mike, I would love to hear a bit about your role at ReedPOP. So what exactly does the C2E2 Event Manager do?
Event Manager is basically the person who runs the entire show. There's an entire team of people. I mean, not it's not like I do everything. That's far from the case. There's an entire team of people who run run a show. It takes a village to run a show, obviously. And there's just one person who kind of oversees and make sure all the plates are spinning and make sure things are getting done in a timely fashion. So that's me. Like I make sure that from, making sure operation stuff is getting done properly, to, we have an operations team and I work with them all the way up to the content, to the guests. And we have people who do all of that stuff. And I just kind of coordinate it all into what eventually turns out to be a completely seamless and uneventful, smooth operation. No, that's not what happened. But we try our best.
Yeah, well, in a couple episodes ago, we had one of your colleagues, Chris Delando, on the show.
He's fired. Oh, no. that was for his sake. I'm sorry. It's a joke. He's not really fired.
The one of the content coordinators for C2E2.
Chris Delando is the content coordinator for C2E2. We were very lucky. Chris worked for Marvel Comics for a number of years, and I think he's actually coming up on his 1-year anniversary. For working for ReedPOP, he came on board as the content coordinator for C2E2, and he totally crushed it. Like coming from a background that, of course, he's knowledgeable about the industry and he has a tremendous amount of experience in PR and marketing and things like that. Content was kind of something that was new to him, and he came in and he created probably some of the best programming that we've ever had at C2E2. So we're very lucky to have him. I'm real proud of him and what he accomplished. And he's still fired. I mean, no, he's not.
He better listen to this after all those nice things.
He better listen.
But no, we had a great conversation when he was on, and he talked a bit about his role, and he explained how ReedPOP, you are grouped into teams, and different teams are working on different shows. Because again, it's not just C2E2 and New York Comic Con. I know there are a bunch of other shows that ReedPOP puts on as well.
We have Emerald City Comic Con, and we also have Keystone Comic Con, which is a new show, which is a launch coming up this September in Philadelphia. Besides our comic portfolio of shows, we do Star Wars Celebration. We do a number of different PAX Unplugged. We've had other branded shows, Star Wars we've done in the past, Star Trek we've done in the past, and UFC and things of that nature. So we got a lot of different fingers in the pop culture industry, and always looking to do more.
Yeah. I read an interview you gave where you said that you've been a lifelong fan of comics, which of course we've touched on in this episode already. And you said, you can't draw, but you can coordinate. And you wanted to be involved in the industry, and you found a great way to do that.
That is true. That is very true. I tried to draw, and I can draw to a very limited extent. Like if I wanted to copy something that Franco had drawn, like I could take a picture that he had drawn and probably copy it to almost an exact duplicate in about 2 to 3 weeks. But it will look really good when I'm done.
You can just hire me to do it.
Exactly.
Get it done.
So yeah, while I don't have much talent in the way of creating, I do have talent in coordinating. I am reasonably organized, and at least in that section of my life.
And before your current position, you got started running the Artist Alleys?
Correct. I used to... Previous to this, I used to run Artist Alley for C2E2 and New York Comic Con. I did that for about 7 years.
I should probably know this, but Artist Alley, is that a ReedPOP specific term, or is that pretty generic across cons?
That's generic. That's been Artist Alley since I was a kid, since I started going to cons as a little kid.
And that's a place that, I know, Franco, you've spent a lot of time behind the table at, right?
Absolutely. And again, not any bias opinion here at all, but Mike runs one of the best Artist Alleys ever. Honestly, out of all the shows that we've ever done, we always look forward to Mike Negin's Artist Alleys. So.
Thank you.
Well, so I'll ask why, because that's something that I'm curious about, and why I'm always excited to get different perspectives on this, because what a cosplayer looks for in a convention might be different than what a creator looks for in a convention versus someone who's hunting for back issues. So like from a creator perspective, what makes for a really good, well-run Artist Alley?
It's a whole bunch of different things. One of the things is putting like-minded people with the same content together, which Mike did. And one of the things that he did with his Artist Alley, which I was always really impressed with from the very beginning, was he would put all the kids creators front and center right down the middle of the aisle. And that's a big thing, not only for us because we get more exposure that way, but I think that's the way it should be because kids need to be seeing that content. I've been at shows where you just come in and they're like, okay, your table's over here. You're the next one in line. So, set up right next to that scantily clad woman right there. And I'm like, well, I have kids content. I don't know how much content I'm going to be able to sell next to this person. So it's just that, and just the atmosphere with which, if you have a concern, that you can voice it and you know that it's going to be heard. And again, not that there was any concerns with Mike's Artist Alley, but if there was something that you would go to him with, he would genuinely listen and try and fix it. And if he couldn't, he'd come back to you and say, hey, listen, we're working on this or doing this. I can't tell you how many times you go to someone or even go look for someone at another show to tell them, hey, there's an issue here, or we're trying to do this. And they're like, oh, well, they either blow you off or you can never find them to begin with.
Right.
So just in that sense, it's easy to deal with when you're trying to do your job.
And just to put this in context for me and for the listeners, Franco, like how many shows are you going to in a year?
I don't do very many. I do maybe about 6 a year or so, and that's small in comparison to a lot of other people, just because of schedule. But I try and do 6 or 7 shows a year, sometimes more, sometimes less.
So what are the ones that you regularly hit? Like New York, San Diego?
New York, San Diego, C2E2, Chicago, and then just really those are the 3 that I tried to hit, and then rotating ones. Like this year, All Yeah Comics has partnered up with Terrificon, so we're going to be out in Terrificon at Mohegan Sun in August. I think I'm doing Heroes Con. I have to find out. I'm not sure.
In North Carolina.
North Carolina. I was out in Colorado, Denver Comic-Con last year. So I just try and hit different ones outside of the big 3, just to kind of get a little bit, more exposure for the work.
There are a lot of shows out there.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of conventions. It's funny because I kind of liken it to film festivals. So when I started on my independent documentary filmmaking odyssey, I was surprised to find out how many film festivals are out there. Because when you think of Film Fest, of course, everyone knows, Sundance and Tribeca and Toronto, like the big ones. South by Southwest is another big one that a lot of people know. But there are, hundreds. There are so many, and there are some that are really specific in terms of, the types of films, the subject matter that they're looking for, all different locations. Like I went to one of my films played at a festival in a bar. It was actually one of the better fests that I went to. But I found, there are so many out there. They're not all created equally. Some are run and promoted a lot better than others. And it's probably fair to say the same thing holds true for comic conventions. But there are so many out there. I guess, for you, Mike, I guess what is the view of all of these shows out there? Like, does it make, for you guys working on these big shows, does it make your job harder knowing that there are these other ones out there, or is there room for all of these different types of shows?
Well, I think for the most part, like, I think a lot of people are recognizing that there's an oversaturation in the industry. Like, there is probably not a weekend that goes by, including like Christmas and Easter, that doesn't have a pop culture convention of some sort. So it's definitely become larger than it ever has been. There's difficulty sometimes because you never want to have events on the same weekend, because especially if you're in the same location or near each other, because you just don't, for me at least, you don't want to step on what the fans have. Like the fans enjoy what their fandoms and going to conventions, and you never want to have them have to make difficult choices so that it's taking away from time from them. Like if there's 2 conventions the same weekend, they have to pick one. As a fan myself, I would like this conventions to be on separate weekends. This way I can go to both if I have the ability to do so. So, when scheduling happens where things are at the same weekend, they have to make a choice, and you feel bad for the fans. You want them to be able to experience it all. You, of course, want them to come to your show. Like, let's be honest, that you want them to come to your event more than another event. But at the end of the day, for me at least, that you want to service the fans and give them as much opportunity as possible to visit as many events as they can. Like, I know as a kid, I would have killed for the chance to be able to go to a convention pretty much every weekend. Mm. We had one every year, maybe. And I lived in New York City. We had one every year.
And those were pretty terrible shows.
And they were great shows. I have great memories of those shows.
I want to continue on this thread because just as we talked about the time before comic shops, I am interested in what conventions used to be like because, I've been going, maybe for the past 10 years or so. But I know that they used to be quite different. So like when you were growing up and going to shows, what were those shows
They
like?
flea markets. They were out and out flea markets, and they were very dirty and they were very grungy, and they were held
the really big ones were like at maybe the New Yorker Hotel
Right,
or the
Hotel Pennsylvania,
Pennsylvania, and you're like, oh, we're going to a big show now,
Right,
and you go there and looks like a flea market. When you get in there too, it's just like a bigger flea market,
right,
on different floors.
That's all it was.
So those were like just vendors, right?
There was it was mostly just vendors. There was no celebrity component to them. Like you would never see, William Shatner or anything like that. That was a separate thing. Creation used to do the Star Trek conventions, but on occasion you would have a couple of creators. I actually went at that signing the other week. I had told Jerry Ordway the story about how the very first convention I went to, he was there. It was him and it was Dennis Janke, and that was it. And that was the big draw. They had 2 creators and then all these vendors. So yeah, on the rare occasion you would get a couple of guests, but not like you see today, where you'll get an artist alley of
Right.
hundreds of creators. Like that just did not exist back then. But it was a little bit cooler back then. To me, I mean, maybe I'm being old man and nostalgic, but when you used to love to troll through the flea market of it and find stuff. Like now today, I don't really do that anymore when I go, even as a fan, because I know like anything I pretty much want, I can get online, and I could probably get online cheaper. Like it's sad.
Yeah,
it's
you don't do
unfortunate.
the hunting that you used to do for things.
Right. You used to look for that one issue. Like, oh, I need Detective 420, 425, and I haven't seen it in any stores, and I don't know where to get it. And you go to a convention hoping and praying that going through 100 long boxes that you find one. Now it's like, well, if I didn't find one, I'll just go online, click, I own it. And there's not the same collecting feeling.
Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit, because I do feel a sense that I get from at least some comic book fans is that a criticism seems to be that a lot of the shows nowadays, especially the larger shows, are so pop culture heavy and not comic centric anymore, that it seems like some fans, especially older school fans, feel like it's missing something now. I mean, you guys know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I kind of want to unpack that a little bit, because I'm trying to understand what the argument is, because the things that I guess they want in a show, like being able to hunt through back issues, meet creators, maybe watch a creator interview on a panel, for example, those things are still there at New York Comic Con or San Diego or C2E2.
Well, we make a very conscious effort for the ReedPOP shows to keep the comic book in,
right.
in
and I want to,
shows.
yeah, exactly. And I want to get to that. But it's just like these things are still there. So is the argument that they're overshadowed, that shows are harder to navigate because there are all these other people here for other things and they can't get to what they want? It's like, what do you think the problem is for the older school fans with the shows nowadays?
I think the most difficulty is not necessarily even with the shows. It's the availability of content on the internet. Like you used to have to search for an old Mego or an old Star Wars toy or an old comic, and nowadays that's available to you at any given instant. So you don't even go into the show with the intent of, I have my lists. Like some people still do that, but not as many as back in the day, because most people who are trying to fill a list, especially if you're that addicted collector like I am, like you want to have it as quickly as possible. Well, I have it readily available to me. I can get it from anywhere in the world. So I do it that way instead of waiting to try and go to a convention and go through the boxes or whatever the case may be. So the internet has kind of harmed the industry in some ways, and even the collectability of the investment aspect of it. Like I remember back in the day, books that used to be worth so much money, like crazy money. Now that once the internet came into being, like those books weren't worth money, because now you realize they are more available than you had thought they were.
Maybe the thrill of the hunt isn't quite so thrilling.
Right. The thrill, because there's no hunt anymore. Like, so that's part of the difficulty. And like, while you still go to a show and you buy stuff, I think it's more impulse buy. Even when you're buying older stuff, like when I go to a show and I back in the day, I used to collect Superboy and Superboy and the Legion, especially like adventure comics and old action comics, like teetering on like Silver Age and teetering on Bronze Age stuff, I'd have lists and I'd go through every. Do you have this one? Do you have the first appearance of Mon-El? Like, I would be crazed for that stuff. Now it's kind of when I go to the convention, I just go through the boxes or look on the walls and just see like what interests me. Oh, that's cool. I'll take that. It's more of an impulse rather than trying to fill a void of a number that you're missing in your collection.
Right.
So
I want to jump back to, what you guys do at ReedPOP, but I want to toss it to Franco and just kind of this question, like what type of show for you as maybe as a fan or as a creator? I mean, what type of show, I guess, do you prefer? Because again, San Diego in particular, a very, very strong Hollywood influence there, where, you have actors promoting shows that really have nothing to do with comics.
Right. Yeah. I was going to respond and say, I don't think I've done a show as a fan in years, more than 10 years or so. For me, what I found is doing the different shows that they each have their own flavor or their own sensibility, where I know that, like, for example, it's been many years since I've done Heroes Con in North Carolina, but I remember going there with a bunch of books and setting up, and all I sold was commissions. And I found that very quickly that that's an art-centric show. Like, people come there to buy artwork. There weren't a lot of, celebrity people there. It's a lot of comic book stuff, but people weren't really even buying comic books. They were buying artwork, which kind of, threw me for a loop. And then you go to other shows like San Diego over the years has just become something so celebrity-oriented that, that just overshadows everything. And honestly, we don't go to San Diego to sell books, because we sell them, but we look to pay for the table and the ride out there and the ride back, but we're there for other reasons, and that's where we get most of our work for all these other projects that we're doing. Something like C2E2, even though I'm from New York, that's considered my hometown show because Art's from Chicago, Art Baltazar's from Chicago. And we've kind of cultivated this kind of like hometown feel there, where people come and every year they'll come see what we have new. What book do you have new, and we'll buy that. And, what kind of paintings do you have? What kind of artwork do you have? So each show has kind of like garnered their own flavor. And you kind of learn what, I'll bring less books to this show and more artwork, or less of this and more of this to there. And you kind of figure that out over the years. But yeah, as a fan, I haven't really been to a show, and anything that I do buy, it's just kind of impulse, and I don't really buy much at shows anymore.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I think there is room for different types of shows, and you mentioned Heroes Con, and I agree. I mean, I have not been personally, but from what I've heard from a number of friends who have gone, it does seem to be a very art-centric show.
Very.
I was just reading up on the Clifton Comic Book Expo in Jersey. I don't know if you've been to that.
I haven't been to it. I've heard of it.
But so that seems to be more of that, traditional, like, just vendors lined up with
Right.
tables and long boxes. So I guess if you want that type of con experience, there are ways to still have that.
Yeah, there's definitely shows that still do that. I just want to point out the Heroes is not a flea market show.
No, I'm not saying that.
No,
it was,
but
yeah.
it's basically a giant artist alley.
Yeah.
With some of the most talented people in the industry, an amazing art auction. Like Franco was saying, it's a very art heavy, art driven show. But I think there's definitely room for these flea market basement shows. Like, I grew up kind of like, we used to go to the Pennsylvania, and that I think it was called the Penta or whatever it was called. But I also kind of grew up in the age of those Mike Carbonaro church basement shows, which were they were flea markety shows. They were in a church basement, and but I have great memories of those shows, and I have great memories of scavenging through that. And I think there's definitely a place for that for people who still enjoy doing that. But I feel like that audience is dwindling. Like even a person like me who does enjoy that experience, and I still try to attend events as a fan. It's actually kind of difficult because I walk in and I know so many people, so it's kind of hard to experience it in that old school way. But my list of wants are very small, because after collecting comics for over 35 years, like, I have everything I pretty much want that I can afford. Like, I want an Action Comics 1. Anyone out in the audience wants to give one up, just I'll send them to the Harrison store. I'll be sure to take good care of it. But yeah,
But then the other thing becomes, I mean, we're a little on the other side of the fence because we have a store. So anything we
True.
want, we can get through the store now,
Right.
as well. So that kind of limits the things that I buy at shows as well. The one thing I do buy now, and that I have bought more of in the past few years, is original artwork from people, which is what I've done, getting commissions, or I got people, a list of people that I'm looking to get, and as soon as I can afford it, I'm gonna hit them up for some stuff.
Franco got an amazing commission recently.
Yeah, from Tom Rainey. It was a Hawkman Aquaman piece, which was
Gorgeous.
amazing. Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Did you get it at C2E2 or no?
No, I've been going back and forth with him for about a year or so. I talked to him in New York at a special edition show a few years ago, and I said, I want to get a piece of artwork from you, and back and forth, and he didn't have the time, and I wasn't ready for what I wanted, and this and that and the other thing, so then we finally hooked up. That's the pinball machine in the other room.
I was like, time's up.
Don't be a flat squirrel. See you next week. No. Yeah, Tom's a great guy. Tom was actually one of the guests on the season premiere of My Comic Shop History this season, talking about the creator perspective at shows. Mike, I want to follow up on something you were saying, because I think it's interesting. You said that fans who are looking for that, more like flea market type thing, that's a dwindling audience. And I guess that's the thing. So for you, for a company like ReedPOP, you need to fill the Javits Center or McCormick Place. Although McCormick Place, I think I don't know that could ever be filled. That place is massive. We talked about that in Delando's episode. But so I guess that's my question. It's like, as you're, crafting one of these shows and programming it, it's like, how do you strike that balance between, we need to have enough different things so that, cosplayers will be excited and people who are into the movies will be excited, and still also catering to those traditional comic book fans? Like, how do you find that balance?
Well, the ReedPOP model, and this is not an exaggeration, this is literally written on the wall of our office, is fans first, right? That's the most important thing to us, is fans first. So we try to create content at all our events, not just C2E2, at all our events that accommodate, as many fandoms as we can. And not like, it's not a matter of, let's throw, a random anime guest in here just to appease some anime fans. Like, if we're gonna do anime content, we're gonna have the anime segment in our show, we're gonna do it to the best of our ability. So for a number of things, whether it's comics, and comics is of course always at the core of our ReedPOP stuff, at the pop culture stuff, because that's kind of where a lot of the stuff originated from, all the movies, everything, it all comes from that base almost. We always trying to create the best comic content that we can, best celebrity content that we can, anime, cosplay. C2E2 is the global championship of cosplay, so we've raised that to a level that that a number of years ago people would have thought was unheard of, like cosplay championship, like who's going to be interested in that? And we saw that there was an audience who had a need, and we wanted to fill that need. And so there's so many different aspects of the show, and we try to fill as many fandoms as we can. Like, we just want we know that the fans are coming there to enjoy themselves, to enjoy the show, to enjoy the community of whatever their particular fandom is, and we just try and build around that. It's not always easy. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna particularly for someone who's trying to learn a particular fandom, like myself. Like, of course, I have a very strong comic background, and I have a strong, celebrity background. But like anime, I struggle with. Like, it's not something that I ever really watched, except we're talking like old school Robotech and Voltron and Battle of the Planets type stuff. Yeah, but like there is so much anime content, and it now that I've been learning over the years. Like, I'm actually amazed, like, how long this has been, such a huge fandom. So
it gives you a new appreciation.
It definitely gives me a new appreciation. And while it's still something some of it I watch. My son's actually a big anime kid. I watch some of it with him, and I'm trying to learn. But it's just because it's not my strength doesn't mean that we want the audience to suffer. So, as a team, like, we all have our strengths and our weaknesses, and we all try and build each other up to the point where we're well-rounded and can provide not even acceptable level for each fandom, but above and beyond.
Is everyone on the team a fan of something, or is there that one guy who's like, I couldn't care less about any of this stuff, but I like planning events?
No, I have to say, for the most part, the C2E2 team all has their particular fandoms, and there's a lot of overlap too, but they all have their particular fandoms. which is fun. Like I've learned a lot about different things. We have one person who works on our team, Leslie. She's into a number of different things, but she loves My Little Pony. And like, I always kind of saw My Little Pony as a kid's thing, right? But she did this whole what we call them lunch and learns, because we do that. We try and teach each other. So every couple of weeks or a month or so, we try to get together for these lunch and learns, and let's talk about a particular fandom or particular segment about the show that while you might be the expert, the rest of the team might not know. And she did this whole thing on My Little Pony, and I walked away like, wow, friendship is magic. Like, yes, I want to be a pony. Like so I learned a lot about that. So
Mike is now attending brony conventions like every other weekend.
I actually have a pony name. What was it? It's actually, I'll post it on my desk. It's like Wonder Trundle or something like that. Like they came up with a pony name for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the motto of, fans first. And, Franco, I mean, you interact with a lot of fans, right, at these shows?
I do.
Yeah, it's like, what is that experience like for you? So you're set up generally in Artist Alley, right? You're behind the table, usually with at least art, right?
People think that we're attached at the hip. We're not. We do we do a lot of other things separately. But, we interact with fans. I mean, that's how we built our base. That's how we got the jobs that we got. A lot of people might not know, but, the job that we got on Tiny Titans was directly related to another book that we were doing prior to that called Patrick the Wolf Boy. And what we would do was, hand it to anybody who would look at it. Anybody who would look in our direction, at these conventions, we would try and entice them over and talk to them about the book, and then they would wind up buying it. And there was this one person in particular that we would see at all these different shows, and her name was Jan Jones, and we just thought that she was a fan because she bought a couple of the books. She thought they were hysterical. She came back and told us about them, and then she started buying artwork from us. We would do these little mini paintings, and we would see her at different cities, and we would always talk to her. And then one day she happened to call Art. And she said, hey, would you guys ever consider working for DC Comics or doing a book for DC Comics? And Art's response was, yeah, do you know anybody that works there? And she said, yeah, me. I'm a senior editor. And we had no clue. You try and be informed because you want to try and hit up some of these people that work at these different, Marvel, DC, or whatever, because you're looking to get a job. And, we just had, there's so many people that work there. You don't know what is in what office, and she happened to work there, and she's the one who got us our start on Tiny Titans. So it was through fan interaction, or so we thought. Well, she was a fan.
Yeah,
she is a fan.
Yeah.
So basically, that's how it worked out. So yeah, I mean, we always try and talk to people and not talk down to kids. We always thought that was very important in all of our work, in our books. Our books. People ask us what age range, and our pat response is always, this is an all ages book. And we literally mean that. We've had kids that have learned to read on our books, and we've had grandparents that have read the books to their grandkids and wound up liking the book and thinking it's funny and telling us that. So, that's one thing we've always tried to do.
Can I interject something here?
Yeah, tell me.
I have to say, Artie and Franco, by far, probably give some of the best fan experience that I've ever seen at a show. Aww. Ever. And I'm not just saying that because you're sitting in front of me. It's a true story. And I'm sure I've told you this. I don't know if I'm pretty sure I've
told you
this.
Again.
But my very first interaction with Artie and Franco was C2E2 2011. And we came up with some random thing where we did something on stage. Right. It was Artie versus you, a drawing competition.
A drawing competition, yeah.
Right. So we get up on stage and we do.
You weren't originally supposed to host that or something.
I was not originally. That's
right,
true.
That's what it was.
I was doing Artist Alley. I had arranged the drawing competition, but I wasn't supposed to host it. And then whoever was doing it, or maybe one of you guys were supposed to do it, and realized we can't do this and host. Right. We need a host.
I think it was someone else that they couldn't do it, and then you had to do it or something. I don't remember.
However it came to be, I wound up emceeing the whole thing and kind of hosting it. And it's like, who thinks Artie's going to win? Who thinks Franco's going to win? And we had a really great time with it. But this is what really proved to me what type of gentleman both of these guys are. You literally, the stage was packed. There was probably like 40 or 50 kids around the stage, like little zombies clamoring for
You ever see
Artie
those
Franco.
scenes in The Walking Dead where all the hands are reaching for you?
It was kind of like
yeah,
that.
it was little hands reaching for us.
So Artie and Franco were doing the drawing competition on these big easels. They would draw, like, if the kids say, draw Batman, you know, Artie would draw Batman, and then, you know, Franco would draw a bat with legs and arms, and like it was
Gotcha.
really fun. But at the end of it, they would give away the drawings to the kids. But, you know, it was only like a half an hour, 40 minutes max. So they gave away all the drawings that we had done, and then there was still God knows how many kids that didn't get drawings. And of course, each and every one of them were heartbroken. And these two dudes just wouldn't have it. Like, there was something that had to be up on the stage, like literally that minute. And they were like, okay, we'll get off the stage. And they went to the side and they sat down on the floor. Actually, Artie sat down on the floor. You leaned over a table with these two big, they pulled the big drawing pads off the easels, and they sat there and they drew for every single kid that was at the thing. And even then kids started coming up that weren't even at it. And they're just like, does somebody draw a picture? And they drew for every single one of them. No, not one kid walked away without a drawing from these guys. And right then and there, I was like, these guys are the best.
Yeah, those are class acts right there.
These are class acts.
Oh,
exactly.
thank you.
That's a perfect way to put it. And like, it wanted to make me build my relationship with them even stronger than it was at the time, which was pretty much nothing. We had just kind of met. We had just met, right? We had been talking through email and stuff, but yeah. And I was like, these are guys that I always want to talk to. I always want to work with, and you know, our relationship built from that.
Oh,
and it was all
that.
from you guys just taking care of the kids.
I'm glad we took the time and did that then.
And suffice to say is literally we've done that a couple of times over the years, and each time it was the same situation. Like they're always taking care of the kids. Kids are always first. Their fans are always first. I've seen them treat 5-year-olds with the utmost respect, like you said, never talking down to them. And I've seen, you know, old men come up and talk for 20 minutes telling a story, and you listen to every word and you're excited and engaged in every moment.
Well, it's
of it.
fun.
So.
I mean, I like being at conventions. You know, I get excited. Don't ask me that question as soon as the convention is over, because I'm tired and I don't want to go to a convention. But and you burn out really fast too. But I'm excited, you know, when I go to a convention. I'm excited for the people that are fans of ours that come up and buy new books. But just if not more exciting is that fan that's never seen our book before, or that, you know, will read it for the first time, or that comes up. And, you know, I can't tell you how many times I've had a parent come up to me saying, you know, my little boy, you know, was reading your books and he would not shut up about it. He's been talking about meeting you guys for like the whole week leading up to the show. And then the kid gets up to our table and he can't get a word out because we're sitting in front of him. And the dad's like, I don't know what's wrong with him. He wouldn't shut up a minute ago, you know, type thing. So that's kind of cool just to have that kind of experience with, you know, I've been a lot of people's first comic. And that's kind of cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's quite the responsibility as well.
I hope I live up to the task.
And I think it's also great what you guys do is they draw for they have these little sketch cards, and they draw sketches for everybody who walks up. Everyone gets a little sketch. And it's not even like, I've seen Artie put like effort into these things. Yeah. Like, you know, kids come up and they're like, oh, I want Batman, I want Spider-Man. It's like, okay, but then, you know, somebody will come up, a little kid will come up like, I want Supergirl on Streaky on top of the flying with Streaky over a planet, a green planet. And like they give all these details, and you're like, okay, and like
we don't do as much of those anymore.
I've seen you do them though. Like you really treat the fans well. You treat the kids especially well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems like generally, and especially that story you told about, you know, staying after to do those sketches, you know, going back to what we were saying before about creating new readers, creating the next generation of fans, you know, at the very least, you gave them a great memory for that day, but, you know, you might have made fans for life with something like that.
Well, that's always our hope. You know, I mean, you know, one of the things that's always touched me from very early on is we sit in a basement. Like my studio's in the basement. You've been to my house, and Art literally works in his basement, and we spend a lot of time alone, you know, working on these things, and then it goes out into the world, and we have no idea who's reading them, but it has a profound impact, and they come up and they tell us, and And that's when it kind of reinforces it for us as at conventions, because we don't have that interaction otherwise. We have it at conventions. And when they come up and tell us, like, your book meant this much to me, or I learned to read on your book, or, you know, like even with my latest book, you know, people are reading it and they love the artwork and they love the story and it's so impactful. And just today, being here in the store, a woman came up to me and said that, you know, I read your last book and I loved it, and I gave it to my mom and she read it and she loved it. And you know, that, like, how do you not feel something after being told that, you know, makes me want to go right home and work on more stuff, you know?
No, that's an amazing, you know, you said before that, you know, it can be, you know, physically demanding being at one of these shows. And I, you know, whether you're a creator or a fan walking the floor, or I can only imagine what it's like for you, Mike. But, you know, to be at a show for 2, 3, 4 days on your feet, sensory overload, I mean, you know, walking around with the backpack maybe, or if you're behind it, whatever it might be, you know, it really can take a lot out of you. But the fact that you're able to come out of a convention, you know, energized at least by those fan interactions, I mean, that's a really good thing.
It'll take a couple of days to get back to things. And Art and I won't speak for a couple of days because I've sat next to him for 4 days. And I'm like, I don't need to talk to you for a couple of days. But then, you know, after that, you're like, oh, wasn't that cool? Or when that lady came, or when we did this, or the best part of the convention. And it gets you re-energized and want to create more. And that's what we want to do, is just create more content.
Actually, one of the favorite things at any of the conventions where you and Artie, and it's not only you and Artie, like Katie Cook has the same thing. Whenever I see a line of kids, and these guys get lines, there could be lines of like 30, 40 kids. Like, I love that. Like, there's plenty of, you know, creators who get tremendous lines of fans, but you get so many kids, and then every kid is so excited. I love that line. Whenever I see it, it always makes me happy. I'm like, this is what it's about right here, right at this moment.
What is the sort of the ratio of people who come up to you at shows now who know your work and, you know, they're already familiar with what you do, versus people who like happen to be walking by and they see some art and they're like, oh, that looks cool. What do you do?
Nowadays, it's a lot more people know what we are or what we do, even if they don't know us. At almost every convention, I'll have somebody come up and look at the books on my table and say, oh, I know that book. Is that you? Type thing. So they at least know my work. So that's definitely changed over the years. My favorite is when they come up and they look at something like, you know, Superman, because we did Superman Family Adventures or Itty Bitty Hellboy, and they'll come up and they'll say, how are you allowed to do that? Like, you know, aren't you going to get sued by DC? Or I'm like, well, no, because we, you know, they hired us to do this, you know. Or how did you do Itty Bitty Hellboy? Doesn't Mike Mignola get mad? Well, he called us and asked us to do this.
So yeah, they think you just went rogue and you're doing this on your own.
Yeah. So
that's interesting.
I think I might do that just to see if anybody's paying attention.
Yeah, I think you can have some fun with that.
I think Itty Bitty Terminator. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Come with me if you want to play.
And what about creator interactions? Because I would imagine the cons are, you know, might be your only opportunity to see certain people. Right?
Yeah, we see all of our friends in different cities around the country in different months. So, you know, we've known Katie Cook for years, and we'll just see her in different cities every other week, you know. So that's always weird. You always see the same people, but in different cities, and you get confused. Like, hey, let's go to that restaurant around the corner. No, that was in Cleveland. This is Detroit. We're in a completely different city. So yeah, and you know, just I've pretty much met all my heroes. Everybody that, you know, I've loved in art, and I've been able to meet or at least talk to, and that was pretty cool. You know, like one of my all-time favorites is Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. And being able to meet him and talk to him and get a piece of artwork from him, you know, I don't get really starstruck or giddy very, very often. But with him, I was like, this is cool. This is really cool. So,
well, kind of on that note, you know, we'll put this forth to either or both of you. Any particularly memorable, funny, interesting interactions that you've had, whether it's with other creators or celebrity guests or even just fellow fans? With
me, one of my biggest ones was meeting Stan Lee a few years ago, and we had a friend that was working with his team when they brought him to a show, and I think it was Baltimore. I can't remember, but we were introduced by him and said, you know, they said, Stan, these guys, you know, they work for DC Comics. They'd like to meet you. And he turned around and he looked at us and he gave us like the sneer and he just turned away from us. And I'm like, oh, I was just dissed by Stan Lee. I'm like, my heart is broken. But then the guy's like, no, hang out. He was just talking to somebody else. And then he tapped him on the shoulder and he said, Stan, these guys, they'd really like to meet you. And he turns around and he goes, all right, why am I meeting these guys again? I can't do a Stan Lee impression, but that's my best one.
It sounded like Gilbert Gottfried.
Yeah. He goes, why am I meeting these guys again? And I said, Mr. Lee, if it makes you feel any better, because I was, working with DC at the time. I think we were exclusive with them at the time. And I said, if it makes you feel any better, I said, I get all my DC comics comped, but I buy all my Marvel comics. And he tapped me on the shoulder. And he goes, I knew I liked you, kid. And he sat there and he talked to us for about, 20 minutes about comics and and how we look like the Hulk. I'm standing next to two Hulks. You guys are huge. So that was fun.
I've had so many crazy, fun, amazing interactions. I told the one recently, and I'll tell it again, about the C2E2 Shia LaBeouf came to the show.
As a guest or as a fan?
He came as a creator, which this is the ironic part, is he emailed me and he was like, hey, I want to come to the show. This is Shia LaBeouf. I want to come to the show. I want to make my own comics and I want to come to the show. And I was like, sure, Shia. Like,
yeah, that's the thing. It's like, how do you even know that that's him?
And I did, and I told people around the office and I was kind of like, it became like a running joke. And I was like, sure, you come to the show. We're all good. You'll have a table. It's fine. He's like, but I want to keep it very low key. I don't want to, yeah, Shia, whatever you want, we'll do it. And, up until the show, we were making jokes. Yeah, when Shia LaBeouf comes to the show,
But you also have to put this in context. This is when he was really, really big,
yeah,
like right after Transformers.
This was right after
not before he went nuts.
Yeah, right? Yeah, this is not before he was. Well, yes,
he was on the verge of
going nuts. So it became a running joke, and even leading up to the show, that we were like, oh, when Shia shows up, and I was like, yeah, you call me when he gets here. So sure enough, I'm on the show floor, and I get a phone call from somebody up at the show office, like, hey, Shia LaBeouf is here. And I'm like, yeah, ha, 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 very funny. And they're like, no, he's really here. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, he's really here. Could you come up here right now? Please come up right now. And I was like, oh, my God. And, of course, I ran up there top speed. And sure enough, it was him and his girlfriend at the time, which I forget her name. But she was some big model. And sure enough, he's like, listen, I want to set up my little lemonade stand. That's what he kept calling it. I want to set up my little lemonade stand. I printed these books. The book was called Let's Fucking Party. That's what the name of the book was. And it was like a little hardback graphic novel. And the girlfriend was like, he's so excited. He spent months drawing this. He printed them all. He bought an expensive printer. He printed them in his apartment. He bound them himself. He spent an entire week just sitting on the floor in his pajamas, binding these. Like, he's very excited to be here. So I'm like, okay, great.
That should have been a clue as to where he was going mentally.
Right. Why, you've never sat on the floor binding books?
Well, I have, but I'm not Shia LaBeouf.
That's true. Oh. You're better looking.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, and I was like, okay, let's, so now I'm walking to a table. I didn't put a table away for him. I never thought the dude was coming. Interestingly enough, somebody happened to cancel that day, and I had a free table right next to George Perez, which was also like, George is a big guest of the show. He's going to have a tremendous line. It's not have Shia. He's obviously going to have a tremendous line. I was like, this is going to be a nightmare, but we'll manage to it. So as we're walking up, he's like, hey, I want it low key. No social media, no announcements at the show. I'm just selling my book. I'm like, all right, are you taking photos? I'm not taking photos. Are you signing autographs for like 8x10s or Indiana Jones memorabilia or Transformers memorabilia? He's like, no, I'm not doing any of that. I'm my little lemonade stand. I just want to do my little book, something. And I'm like, okay, great. I will have, I said, I can't stand there, but I'm going to get one of my best people, one of my Artist Alley crew, C2E2 Artist crew, Artist Alley for life. I brought one of those guys over there, and I'm like, listen, this is this deal. Make sure that everyone sticks. I will literally come back every 5 to 10 minutes and just make sure things are okay. And that's what I do. I would circle and circle. That's how I kind of did Artist Alley as a whole. But I made sure I wanted to pass by that. So I come back about 10 minutes later. Now, this is people who don't even realize who he is. And they start to see, and he's wearing a blue cap, and there's some recognition. I come back 10 minutes later. The dude is on the table, knees on the table. In one arm, he's got a little kid. In the other arm, he's got Optimus Prime helmet. And he's screaming at the mother, take the picture. Yeah, let's take this picture. And then like the rest of the day, that's who he was. He took pictures. He signed autographs for everybody. There wasn't a person who rolled up to him that didn't have a great, amazing experience. And he was there all day. And he sold out of his books, and he was very excited. But when the end of the day, literally the end of the day came, like a light, like he was hugging me. Shia LaBeouf was hugging me. Thank you so much for this experience. Great time. And then all of a sudden, like total blank face. It's like, but now I need to go.
Light switch.
Like light switch. He was like, I need to go right now. I was like, okay, sure. Let's get. He's like, no, I need to be out of here in the next minute. Like I need to go right now. And the show had already closed. It wasn't a matter of like. Right. And he's like, I need to go right now. And I'm like, okay. And he was like, no. And his girlfriend was like, we got to go now. And we just started getting up all the stuff and putting it, he had suitcases and we were like rushing through. And he's like, let's go. And we start running through the convention center because he didn't even want to be stopped by, because he figured vendors or somebody, whoever was left over would stop him. And he's like, you just got to make a line, make a path. Like I got to go through. I was like, okay, let's go. So we run through the show and we're literally running, me, him, and this supermodel all running with the luggage, and we're like trying to get there. And he's like, I need to get out of here now. So we get to, have you ever been to C2E2?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just this year.
Okay. So the Hyatt, the hotel that's connected to the McCormick place is basically where everyone stays, most people stay, and where everyone goes. If you want to catch a cab right after the show, you can't catch it outside. Right. You got to catch it outside the Hyatt. So this is like Saturday on outside the Hyatt. There is a line right after the show. There is a line of over 100 people waiting for cabs. And he's like, you need to get me in a cab now. So I literally run to the front of the line, and who's standing at the front of the line? Dan DiDio. Dan DiDio is the person that needs to get a cab. And I'm like, Dan, I got to take a cab. He's like, what are you talking about? And I point to Shia. I'm like, he needs a cab right now. I'm going to take your cab. He's like, you're not taking a cab. I'm like, I got to take your cab. I'm sorry. And I was like, and Dan didn't knew me, but he doesn't know me as well as he probably does today. And I was like, listen, and the cab pulled up, and Dan's like, he like lunges. I'm like, Dan, and I open the door, and like, literally, Shia jumps in the car, and I grab his suitcase and throw it in the backseat, not even the trunk, like practically hit him in the chest. His girlfriend jumped. I slammed the door, and it just it's like, and drives away. And Dan's like, what the fuck? And I'm like, Dan, I'm sorry. And everyone's screaming at me. I'm like, I'm so sorry. And I ran away, and I felt so bad about it. I was like, oh my God, like that just went off the rails real quick. I saw Dan later in the night at the Hyatt bar, and I was like, listen, man, I'm so sorry. And he's like, he shakes my hand, he hugs me. He's like, I had no idea what was going on. He goes, somebody after you ran away said that was Shia LaBeouf, and he goes, oh, now I understand. So that was probably one of the more nuttier things that have happened at a convention. That is amazing. Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
That's amazing. I don't know why, but I think what strikes me the most about this is the fact that he did everything himself. Like he emailed you personally, right? He didn't come with a whole team. He didn't have a driver waiting for him after.
Nope, nothing.
So I give him credit for that. Although, yeah, what a bizarre end.
Yeah,
to that.
I still have his email address and his phone number. Like, you almost feel like using it. Like I almost feel like, hey, Shai, how you been? Like, but I don't do that.
I never heard about that.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I wonder if Dan even remembers. I wonder if I'm sure he registered in his memory at all.
Yeah, that really took a turn at the end. I don't know. Maybe it was just performance art that he was doing. Like, I'm going to be a comic creator for a day, and then it's like, he's done.
I have to say he gave a tremendous fan experience. Tremendous. Like,
I got my picture with him.
You got a picture with him? That's right. I remember. I got a picture with him. Like, he hugged me like 30 times. Every time I came up, he's like, thank you so much for giving this to me. This is an amazing gift you have given to me. And I didn't have the heart to tell him, like, I didn't think you were fucking showing up. So,
what did George Perez think? Did he?
George Perez he was just like, what the hell is going on over here? Because it was so crazy. And I had went up to him and prepared him. And he was like, I was like, but listen, I promise you, we got it handled. Like, I had like 3-4 people managing the lines and making sure that, and like he, apparently from what I understand, they got along very well. And, apparently George, really bonded with the supermodel girlfriend, from what I remember. And like, it all went smooth.
All right. Something for everyone.
Yeah. It was a good time.
Hey, George, the kid from Transformers is here.
Right. Exactly.
He has a comic he's going to sell. That's amazing. I don't know though. I think that's I don't know where else to go. I think that I don't know that we could top that.
And my memento from that weekend, from that moment, is we had bullhorns that we would use to clear the floor, which we do not use anymore, by the way. ReedPOP shows we do not use.
Those were a little obnoxious.
Bullhorns. But it was like the second year of C2E2. So it was like, hey, we need bullhorns to clear the floor. And I'm like, a year later, like, no more bullhorns. But I was using a bullhorn to clear the floor, and he came up and he grabbed it out of my hands. And he started like singing into it and like, all right, everybody's got to go home. We got to pack up, time to go home. And then he signed it and he handed it back to me. And then I was like,
you have a signed bullhorn?
I have a signed C2E2. It's branded C2E2. And it was funny because there was a big thing like, don't lose the bullhorns. Like they cost like $40 or $50. Like, don't lose the bullhorns. And then at the end of the night, I was like, well, I'm keeping this. Yeah. And they're like, no, you're not. And I'm like, yes, I am. I was like, it's signed by Shia. I'm like, I'm keeping this. Like, no, you got to return that. So I went to my boss and I was like, this is Shia LaBeouf's bullhorn and I want to keep it. And he's like, of course you get to keep it. and I was like, yes. And it sits in my office today, my office at home.
What an amazing, bizarre story.
Exactly.
We should try to get him on the podcast. He might do it. You never know.
You never know. It would be definitely interesting.
At a certain point, though.
Yeah.
Well, I guess on that note, we've talked about a lot. I mean, you're both convention veterans. I'm sure we could go on and on. But I've really enjoyed our conversation. Was there anything else that either of you wanted to say or anything big that we didn't get to that you really wanted to talk about?
No. Except for my new book. It's called The Ghostly Owl with art by Sarah Richard. It's out of bookstores now. And I'm doing Encounter. That Ghostly Owl is through Action Lab. And Encounter is a book that I'm doing with Art Baltazar and Chris G. Russo, and that's out through Lion Forge, and that's out monthly right now.
Awesome. And then you mentioned this earlier, but you are partnering with Terrificon, which is going to be in August. So what is happening exactly? All Yeah has their own room
we have our own
during this?
we have our own kid zone.
Cool.
So we're working out a whole bunch of details, and you're going to get an exclusive right now. So we're working on a whole bunch of stuff where we're going to have a section where people can work robots and drive like battle bots and stuff like that. And then we're going to have a lot of interactive stuff. We're partnering with the Westport Library to do a whole bunch of programming for the show. So it's going to be, what happened was Mitch puts on a great show, and I've done his show a couple of times, and he's at Mohegan Sun, and they built a brand new exposition center, which is 4 times the space of what he originally had. And he came to me, he goes, I remember you said that you might want to do your own, convention or something like that, He goes, any interest in partnering up, and doing, kids activities here? And I said, yeah, but if we do, I want to do it so like that, like people walk into the experience and say, I don't know what that was, but it was a lot of fun. So I want to bring in stuff that you've never really seen at a convention before. And hopefully we'll pull that off. We'll see what happens. But it's August 17th, 18th, 19th at Mohegan Sun.
Very cool. Well, I'm planning to be there for that, and I look forward to seeing it. And for any of our listeners, I mean, especially if you're in the tri-state area, why don't you give it a shot? Check it out.
Should be fun.
Mike, anything else that you wanted to say?
I could talk for hours about comics and comics conventions. I think the only thing is, if you haven't had a chance to visit one of the ReedPOP shows, particularly C2E2 in Chicago, which will be March 29th through the 31st of 2019, you should definitely check it out. We always have a lot of great comic stuff. We always have a lot of great content related to whatever your fandom is usually. So we have a new launch coming up, Keystone Comic-Con. That is September 14th through the 16th in Philadelphia. A lot of great stuff is getting announced for that. So far, our first guest is Frank Miller. First comic guest announced was Frank Miller. That's the only one I remember off the top of my head that I know has been announced. So I don't want to say anything.
I haven't been announced yet.
You have not been announced. So definitely come down and check it out. It's going to be a good time.
Cool. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to do this. I really enjoyed speaking with both of you. Hopefully we'll have more opportunities to podcast again in the future.
Anytime.
That'd be great. Anytime. Oh, I forgot one more important thing.
Yes.
Come down to All Yeah Comics in Harrison, New York. Come visit us here.
Or if you're out in Chicago.
If
you're in Chicago, go to beautiful downtown Skokie, All Yeah Comics. Or if you're in Muncie, go to beautiful downtown Muncie and see All Yeah Comics there.
Right on.
That's right. Thank you to All Yeah for hosting us for this recording. Thank you to everyone for listening. Be sure to tune back in 2 weeks for another all-new episode. It's going to be our con survival guide episode, so it should be a lot of fun. And until then, don't be a flat squirrel.